Hello and welcome to the conversation. This is Honest Faith Conversations, and as always, I am Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias.
This week we are going to be discussing our top 10 media pieces of art. What do we call them? Top 10?
I just say like top 10
best of the year.
favorite media pieces we encountered this year.
Okay. And since we are new parents as of April this year, we did not get out to the theaters as much as we usually do. We used to go at least once a week, maybe.
Maybe every other week.
Yeah.
You know, if we were kind of on a longer stretch, but it was definitely our like go-to date night.
Yeah.
And with an infant, that's a little hard to do.
Yeah, we've maybe seen 4 movies in the theater since he's been born.
Yep.
So don't be surprised that our best of list this year isn't going to include a whole lot of movies.
Yeah, and it's not going to include obvious things that you may have encountered that definitely probably deserve to be on this list. It's just that we have not watched it or played it or listened to it to actually be on our own personal list.
Yep. With that being said, you may hear in the background some white noise that's coming through our son's baby monitor. So Peter may make an appearance in this episode.
All right, so I will begin. We're going to do, I want to do the my top 10, starting with 10, moving to 1, and then I'll talk about some honorable mentions. I'm just going to give a quick rundown of each, why I liked each of them. Some of them are obviously going to have longer explanations than others. To be honest, my list, it doesn't really represent things numerically very well because I have a hard time picking favorites. So these are all of my children and I couldn't really pick. So no one is really better than the other. Let's just say that.
All right.
So I'm going to start with number 10 with Zootopia. Zootopia, if you guys haven't seen it, honestly, when I first saw the trailer, I was not too excited to watch it, but then I kept on hearing all these great reviews from these critics and people that I really admired, and I was like, what? This is an animated cartoon. Animated cartoons have not been the bar hasn't been very high in a while, especially in these type of animated cartoons, So if you haven't seen it, just real quick, I won't spoil anything, but it deals with a lot of gender issues, a little bit of race issues, and kind of how the main characters kind of deal with that, essentially. I mean, race for animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there can be one. But and then my number 9 was actually a podcast. One of the better things about my son being born is now I listen to a lot more podcasts because I'm having to listen to something while I'm, changing him, giving him a bath, cleaning his room, doing his laundry, making his food, all of that stuff. So I've turned to podcasts more, which I didn't previously to this year. And my number 1 podcast is actually In the Dark. It actually came out this year. If you are into crime podcasts, true crime podcasts, I would highly suggest this one. If you liked Making a Murder, then you would probably like In the Dark. It's a story about the abduction of Jacob Weatherling. I don't know if too many of you remember. This was almost 30 years ago. And the journalist talks about exactly what happened, what went wrong in the case, what went right in the case, things that were overlooked, and how the person actually was apprehended at the very end, which actually happened while they were making the podcast, which was kind of interesting, which you don't really see a lot. So I would highly recommend listening to that. You can chime in at any time if you want to add.
This is your list.
I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, number 8 is 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I might have liked this more than maybe I should have, but I watched it when I was pregnant, and so my emotions were like super heightened at that point in time, and I love great suspense movies. Like, I love them so much, and this just like blew me out of the water. I did not expect that ending. It really did catch me off guard, which I loved. Okay, moving on to the next one. I probably should have put this higher on my list, especially, who I am as like a Potterhead. But number 7, Fantastic Beasts. I really enjoyed watching a movie about the Harry Potter universe that I had absolutely nothing, like I had no idea really where it was going to go. I knew the main character. I knew he was a Hufflepuff. I knew what he did for a living. I knew he wrote this book. Like, I knew kind of like some things about him, but really the whole main storyline was completely new to me, and I really, really enjoyed that. And moving on to number 6, I'm going to go with Deadpool. Yes. Again, do not watch this movie with children. Like, just don't. Like, there was somebody in the audience who brought their child, and I'm like, seriously? Seriously? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? And then moving on to number 5 is Civil War. I mean, great movie. I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm assuming that our listeners also watched it as well. Number 4, Walking Dead. I'm going to go with, the current season this year. So with, I don't want to spoil anything, but we see Negan. So when Negan appears, all the way to where the season, like the mid-season finale. Yep, that is a great season, and I really, really enjoyed it. Number 3, Stranger Things, which came out on Netflix. And if you haven't watched it, you live in a hole, so go watch it because you'll have time. Okay, so you need to have definitely a few hours to watch this because you will binge watch this. Like, there is no way around it. You are going to binge watch this. And number 2 is another podcast that actually started this year that I found, Harry Potter and the Sacred Texts. I know I mentioned it before on this podcast, and I'm just mentioning it again. It's really nice to read the books in a different way, and I really appreciate it. It's made me appreciate the books even more than I already do. And then number 1, surprise, surprise, Rogue One. I'm not going to say how it ends. I'm not going to talk about the plot because it's very, very spoilery, and I just feel like
we've already talked about it on this podcast.
Well, I know, but if you didn't watch the last or didn't listen to the last podcast, which I highly recommend you do, I'm just not going to say anything. Okay.
Your honorable mention?
Okay. I guess my honorable mention would have to be Luke Cage. Luke Cage is, if you guys aren't too familiar with that, he is a superhero, part of the Marvel Universe. He, in the comics, is part of the Defenders. Mm-hmm. He's part of the Defenders, so he's part of, like, the Daredevil, Elektra, that group. So he's kind of like a lesser superhero, but anyway, it's great. Like, it's like all of the whole cast is fantastic. The directing is fantastic. The writing is fantastic. The music, the visuals, like everything about it is fantastic. Maybe I should have put him higher on the list now that I'm thinking about it. But if you haven't watched it, go watch it, please.
All right. Well, my list. I'm going to begin with my honorable mention. My honorable mention would be 2 things of the same name as The Walking Dead. Both of those are honorable mentions because I did rather enjoy what the direction that the showrunners are kind of taking it in, though I feel like it could have been higher, it could have been done a little bit better. But again, it's, as we talked about in our Walking Dead episode, that I feel that they're kind of catering to the lowest common denominator, as it were.
But I think you'd have to appreciate the amount of anticipation that this season was called for, which I think made it good.
Yeah. I also am enjoying the third season of the Telltale game, primarily because the protagonist is not Clementine, which, if you've played the other seasons, it's kind of revolves around Clementine. This season, not so much. I think they're going in a new direction. That's why they've renamed it. It's not Walking Dead Season 3. It's Walking Dead New Frontier. It works on a couple of different levels, but that the main protagonist and main antagonists are Latino, which for me, that is fantastic. And I think we need more Latino heroes to look up to. There's not a whole lot of that in American culture, which it's weird because we're like the largest growing minority in this country. But
you know what I just realized? Fear the Walking Dead. Like, they also have.
They have. Well, they're in Mexico, so
yeah, they're in Mexico, so that would take it. But I mean, like, for some reason, The Walking Dead seems to be focusing more on that than other aspects of media.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Number 10, starting my list here, is Civil War. Civil War almost did not make it on my list, and this is because I enjoyed the movie. Captain America, the Russo brothers have been doing a fantastic job with the Captain America brand. With Captain America.
With the mention of Cleveland as well.
Yeah, and so they're doing just fantastic work with it. I just think that, I don't know, there was just, after really digesting the movie, it feels like there were a lot of just plot holes. There was a lot of things that, we kind of let go of, but, it was still a lot of fun. It was, you still had that airport fight scene, which, I think made the movie. And everything else just was kind of like, eh. So I think that's kind of where it was at. It was kind of like that airport fight scene, and everybody forgot about the rest of the movie.
Well, I think also the fight between Iron Man and Cap, like the intense one. Oh, and Bucky, like the three of them fighting. I thought that was a good scene too.
Next one on my list is Daredevil Season 2. I really liked the second season. I really think that the characters really kind of came into their own. You saw them as real characters rather than two-dimensional beings. You saw that Matt Murdock's kind of whole struggle with his code and with his faith really came part and parcel with who he was in this season, with him and the Punisher, and with everything else in the season. It was brilliant, and also brought in the Hand, which actually made it fantastic. More of the mythical stuff, and I know that they were trying to get things ready for Doctor Strange, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit because that's on my list coming up. But Daredevil Season 2 was really good. And we can talk more about some of the stuff after I get through the list. And number 8 for me was Deadpool. Deadpool I thought was hilarious. It was fantastic. It really took the superhero movie and kind of did something different with it, and which I think is needed. Yeah, it's very much needed because we're very much steeped in the superhero movie era of Hollywood. Number 7 is 10 Cloverfield Lane for me. It's I am a big fan of J.J. Abrams and the fact that he didn't direct this one, but he was a producer on, and just his work is I'm just a huge fan of his, and you could tell that his fingerprints were on this. A lot of his mystery box stuff was in that. Not a whole lot was given away right away. Even if you went into it expecting, Cloverfield stuff, you still got, that little bit of satisfaction in that movie, and you still got a lot of that stuff kind of working together, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, you can tell he takes a lot of pride in his stuff he produces and he directs.
Number 6 for me is a podcast and NPR show, is Radiolab. I know it's probably been around for a while, but I just discovered it this year. I just started listening to NPR a lot more this year. And there have been some fantastic ideas that they kind of really struggle with. And I think that's one of those things for me that's the reason why I'm doing this podcast, reason why I'm doing a lot of these things, is to have that conversation with these things, to kind of struggle with these ideas. And especially there were a few episodes that really made it this for me, which were about, the way that we kind of develop ourselves, and they talked about the study that's done with kids and marshmallows, and that's something that we'll probably have to talk about here later on.
I was about to say kids and marshmallows.
Well,
the funny bunny?
No. They found that if they give a kid a marshmallow and they say, if you wait, to eat the marshmallow.
Oh yes.
Then you can have a second marshmallow, and they found that the kids who waited actually did better in life. They did better on tests. They did better on all these other things in life. When they saw that they had this ability to reason through these things, and it was a very interesting thing to kind of think about and struggle with. There was another thing a few weeks ago on. I don't really remember. I think it may have been about fear. I caught it in the middle of the episode, but it was. They were talking about how our bodies kind of work with these things. Is that some people who have these irrational fears, and me, I struggle with general anxiety disorder, and so they were talking about the fact that this one person who they had on the show, and I can't remember if he was a doctor or whatever, but he was talking about how there was a storm and he was in this apartment in New Jersey at the time, and that his wife was standing near the window and heard a click, and so he was adamant that it was somewhere else in the house. So she went off to go check on it. So he went up to go check out the window, and while he was there and he walked away from the window, that the window blew in. Like that click was the window. And
the window cracking?
Yeah. And that now every time that he's near a window, like anytime he feels a breeze near a window, that he has this irrational fear. And they were talking about how that gut reaction is just kind of your brain's way of saying this is the average of all the experiences you've had with this. And if you've had like one really bad experience with something, that it can skew the average to bad. Mm-hmm. Which for me, with my general anxiety disorder, it really, there are things that it really skews my view on some things. And so it really helped me to kind of figure some of that stuff out. And so that's why Radiolab is as high as it is on mine. Moving on with my list. Number 5 is Game of Thrones Season 7. We're definitely going to have to do a full podcast episode on Game of Thrones.
Oh my gosh.
And probably before the next season.
Yeah. That fight scene. Can I just say that? The Battle of the Bastards. Yeah. And that's, you can put the curse thing on here if you want, but that's what the title of the episode is called. Yeah. Fan-frickin-tastic.
Oh, I know. That was HBO saying, you don't have to be a big budget movie to do large war battle fantasy scenes. Mm-hmm. That was like knocked it out of the park. I think that made the season. I got to be honest. I got to be come clean about this. I was not that big into Game of Thrones in the first few seasons because it was all about that political intrigue and stuff like that. I can't stand it. Like I have enough of that.
I eat that up for breakfast. I'm like, yes, please.
I have enough of that in my own life, and I can't deal with that. And so last couple of seasons, it really kind of started to make it, for me, make it more interesting, make it more, like the characters actually, they have desires, they're real characters, and so that's why it made it all the way up to number 5 on my list. Number 4 for me was Luke Cage, and Luke Cage was incredible. It was, you could tell that the director, the showrunner, was a former hip hop writer, that he was just, a former music writer, because the music was just on point throughout the entire season. And, just the acting was superb. It was just incredible. I'm really, huge fan of what Marvel is doing with their television shows on Netflix. Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you notice it is not on my list at all.
Nope, none of mine either.
Because I think they kind of dropped the ball in this last season. This recent season with Ghost Rider has been okay. But
I'm really sad they dropped Agent Carter. I think that they missed an opportunity. They should have dropped Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and kept Agent Carter. But that's just my own personal...
Yeah, well, and the fact is that I don't think that any of the movie producers and directors are going to want to use any of those TV characters from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all. All right, moving on. Number 3 brings me to what I said I was going to come back to, is Doctor Strange. A few years ago, we were trying to come up with an idea of cosplay costumes for Denver Comic Con. And I had decided that I really wanted to do Doctor Strange costume, because Doctor Strange to me really resonated with me, because at the time I was working as a youth minister. And I really feel like Doctor Strange is kind of like that mythological kind of dealing with deeper questions and mysteries of the universe kind of thing. And so I kind of resonated with that. And the fact is that his robes kind of look like clergy robes, like vestments. And so I wanted to do my own take on his costume, and I started working on this. So I started doing research into Doctor Strange, and I really just love Doctor Strange. Like, he's this wonderful character to me, and started reading more of the comic books and everything else, and so the movie for me, it really made. I think Benedict Cumberbatch was, when I heard that he was going to be doing the role, I was like, this is a safe bet. He could do this role in his sleep, and he did. He did a wonderful job, and I love the way that the producers, the director, treated the character. They didn't take it the same way as the comic book characters and some of the animated movies did, because he wasn't, spoiler alert, he wasn't healed at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
He was still struggling with the infirmity in his hands, and that he was still a broken man at the end. And that's what I think makes Doctor Strange so wonderful, was that throughout the comic books is that he's always this kind of broken man, even though he's cocky and arrogant, that he's still broken.
Yeah, well, it makes him more human.
Exactly. And I think that's why I really liked it. That's why it came up a whole lot higher than Civil War for me. And number 2 is Stranger Things. It didn't top my list, very top. I think what's coming at number 1, but I'll say that for what I say for number 1. But Stranger Things, growing up in the 80s and 90s with all of these sci-fi things, and like I said in the very first episode, I am a huge nerd, and so all of these references and everything else, it was my childhood in a television series. And I think that the kind of the Lovecraftian concepts in there, and the idea of that parallel dark universe, and it just, man, it was incredible. Like, I am my very top number 1 all-time favorite thing for sci-fi is time travel.
What?
And
No, I'm just kidding. No, if you know him, like, this is not going to be any surprise.
like a few years ago, I had determined that I was going to go through every single movie and television show that used that trope. I found that it was almost an impossible task, but I've gone through a lot. I've seen
and you've seen some really bad ones,
really horrible movies, including Hot Tub Time Machine and Hot Tub Time Machine 2. Oh, they were horrible. But this one, I mean, it doesn't have time travel in it, but the reason why I brought it up, was because my second most favorite is this idea of parallel dimensions, parallel Earths kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that there are more layers to our reality than we perceive. And that's kind of my whole idea of the afterlife and everything else. And in fact, I think maybe we should probably do a whole podcast episode on Stranger Things because
I know we could. I would rewatch it again with you.
Well, because I think that it has a lot to do with the afterlife, and I think that the afterlife, the whole ideas of afterlife, are steeped in the entire show, and that's what just blew me away for that entire show.
Oh yeah.
My number one, obviously, is Rogue One. It was not the Star Wars movie that we needed, but it was the Star Wars movie that. Wait, no. It was not the Star Wars movie we deserved. It was the Star Wars movie we needed. That's what I was trying to say. Mm-hmm. It was now a week after we've seen it, because you guys listened to our last podcast, hopefully. But I loved it. It was a good Star Wars movie. It just, it made you feel for each of the characters. I know a lot of people don't like the fact that they CG'd some of those folks who have passed away into the movie, but I can kind of see some of the arguments that people have been making about how it dishonors the memory of those actors, and with Carrie Fisher just passing away yesterday, rest in peace. Sorry, it's still fresh, and
I know. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna cry a little bit. Thanks for bringing that up again.
There's number one thing on social media that I'm seeing today is people saying, "Tell Star Wars not to CG her into the to Episode 9," which the reports were that she was already done with filming with Episode 8. So I'm pretty sure that the directors are going to know that this, weighs heavy on people, and they're going to, I don't know what's going to happen in Episode 8. Episode 8, who knows? She probably dies in Episode 8, General Organa, and it just, wow. Anyway, but spoiler, if you have not listened to our last podcast and you've not yet seen the movie, but Princess Leia is CG'd in this movie. And
for 10 seconds.
Yeah, 10 seconds. So, there is. I don't know. I don't think that it really dishonors the memory of those actors. I think it really, since they played a bigger role in this, I think that, granted, like Alec Guinness is probably not going to be somebody that you're going to CG into Star Wars, because he hated Star Wars. Afterwards, he was kind of like, no, I don't, no more Star Wars for me. That was, I needed the money, that's why I did it. And, I think that dishonors his memory. Whereas, what's his name? No, the actor who played Moff Tarkin.
I can't, hold on. Keep talking, I'll look it up.
Since he died in the 90s, and I don't think he really said anything bad about the Star Wars series. He was Moff Tarkin. He was that villain. Yeah. I think he did a wonderful job of doing that in the original trilogy. And using him here in this and giving him a bigger role, I think it really kind of defines who he was.
Peter Cushing,
yeah.
Yep.
he was a wonderful actor. Anyway, so those were our our top tens of 2016. Obviously, we're not going to stop with our media consumption in 2017.
Hopefully not. I mean, it's been kind of hard to get to the movie theaters with a baby, but...
Yeah, and, now with us in new careers and everything else, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for us to do that. But, there's always rentals.
Yeah.
I even included, when I was making a list of all the media that we consumed in 2016, I even included our, things that we had rented and stuff like that, and even the rentals were not even worth mentioning.
Nope.
Like Batman v Superman. Oh, that was...
I know, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, please don't mention that one.
That was just not good.
I am actually kind of excited to explore more podcasts. I used to be like, ooh, podcasts. You listen to podcasts? Ooh, how fancy of you. Just kind of like making fun of the people who listen to podcasts. And now I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm like, what have I become? I become one of them.
Well, you're a podcaster now, so...
That is true. But I think that's probably what I'm going to be venturing more into prediction-wise this next year. Mm-hmm. In the Dark they're done with that, In the Dark, because, they caught the guy and there's nothing more to go on unless they're going to have additional episodes. But Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, we're only in book 2, so I'm really excited to continue on with the next books. I actually just heard today that my favorite podcast, Stuff Mom Never Told You, is no longer going to be a thing.
I thought it was on your top 10 list.
Yeah, but it's, because it started so much. I was actually listening to it beforehand, and they did have really good episodes this year, but just I couldn't, pick one episode. I highly recommend that you guys go listen to it. They are a feminist podcast, but they also cover all kinds of stuff. They talk about the history of unicorns, but then they also talk about serious things like miscarriages and maternal depression and anxiety, and they're not afraid to talk about the tougher issues. They talk a lot about race, and they talk a lot about how the history of, for example, government programs have actually gone against helping people of certain races. They were talking about food stamps, for example. That program was actually founded to help white widows. Yeah, that's it. You don't think of that today, but that's actually, it was just for white ladies whose husband passed away. But anyway, I highly recommend going and visiting them. They're extremely funny, and the community that they built around their podcast, just I'm just going to forever hold in my heart. I love them so dearly. So.
Well, and predictions for me for 2017. Well, it depends on, I guess, how much we're making and how much, I can actually spend on this next year. But I really started reading comic books again in 2015. 2014, 2015, and that was when the new Miss Marvel had come out, and
Thor,
the new Thor. When they were both very, very good and very well written, and I didn't get to continue those stories because I know that those went off into the Secret Wars and into Civil War II. So I would like to pick those up again and find out what happened in Civil War II. And those things, but comic books can be expensive. And since we have a baby, who knows what I'm going to be able to do. Yeah, I think podcast for sure has been on my list, and for listening to some of these radio shows. I'm a big fan of radio, which is funny because I just did a research report on radio, and finding out that radio is still the number one media in America. Is kind of like it reaches more people than television does, which I was really surprised at. Was that granted, the more people watch TV for longer, but there are more people who listen to radio than watch TV, which I was kind of blown away by.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, a lot of people are getting rid of their TV now.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of cable cutters and stuff like that. In fact, we don't have cable anymore. We're primarily on subscription services now, which I think maybe we can have a podcast episode about cable cutting as well. But there's a whole lot of the shows that we watch aren't really, you don't really need a cable subscription for. Except for The Walking Dead. That was,
Yeah, the one thing.
the one thing. Well, and that's, we had HBO Go, whichever one, I think it's Go, the one that was for
or
for
HBO
mobile.
Now. Whatever, whenever it was. Yeah, for Game of Thrones.
Yeah, for Game of Thrones this year. And I think I just didn't renew the subscription after a while because Game of Thrones season was over, and I was like, we don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people have been telling me I need to watch Westworld, and so
yeah, I've been getting a lot of people telling me to watch that too. So maybe that's something we can watch. So we can add that to our future maybe 2017 list.
Yep. Well, season 2, we'll have to talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I know this episode we didn't talk too much about faith, but every once in a while it's okay to break it up a little bit. Even though, like me, when I consume media, I usually see some kind of extra message, as you might say, in there. I know that sounds really silly, but it's kind of part of my upbringing.
Well, as I wrote in the description for the show, it is the intersection of pop culture and faith. Mm-hmm. So we're doing more pop culture in this episode. So this is the pop culture for us.
Yes, us as late 20s, early 30s parents.
As new parents, millennial new parents, and so that's discovering through that process of your transition from being a married couple to parents, which you're no longer an adult, you're a parent now, which is a completely different category of human being.
I have done some things that I never thought I would do as a human. I've willingly stuck my whole my fingers in my son's mouth in order to retrieve something.
Yeah. And, our son, who is, he just loves putting things in his mouth. So.
He does, yes. He's adorable. He's so cute. He, has the best smile ever, but...
Yeah, we may be a little bit biased on that. So, are there any other pop culture things that we really need to take a look at?
Yes, please let us
next
know.
Year? Be in contact with us. We do. Listen, we do.
We're parents.
Really appreciate any feedback that we get on this, and even if it's just to say, well, maybe you guys should sit farther away from the mic or something else like that. That's fine. It shows that you actually listen. So yay! Anything like that, we're more than happy to receive your feedback. We do have a Google Voice number, and you can leave us a voicemail, and I'll probably just post that
in the description.
Or something later on. But if you want to be part of that part of our conversation, we ask that you do. And even if you just want to record something and email it to us, honestfaithconvos@gmail.com. Or if you subscribe to us on Spreaker, which is great because it's a great service. Or YouTube, because YouTube, you can leave comments on our podcast, which get distributed there as well. And we're all over the place. So come find us, come be part of the conversation. And with that being said, we invite you to be a part of the conversation.